episode 69, and as much as I've been putting it off, we are back on the London tubes today. One of the reasons I've been putting it off is we are going to Arsenal, and if you know anything about football, you'll know that in the UK, if you Google Arsenal, well, Arsenal murders, Arsenal ghosts, anything like that, the murders are all horribly recent. Even up to the last 3 weeks, there's been terrible stabbings in the area. Some teenagers, and if you type in ghosts, it all comes up about footballers' personalities. So I've been really struggling with that. One of the reasons I wanted to do this podcast, though, was to talk about some lesser known incidents that have happened in Britain, and so we're having one of those episodes this week. Before we get into it, though, bit of news. Weirdly, one of my TikTok videos, I believe the kids would say it went viral. So if you are a new listener, thanks to my Hoop at Bella and the Witch on TikTok, hi, welcome. I will make an effort to think about what I say in my next TikTok video. I'm not at my most eloquent. So that was very strange. Went out for a dog walk. Came back, loads more followers, loads of likes, loads of comments, deeply sinister. Also, this is a shout out to anyone who wants to send me in their own spooky Halloween story. I want to do a listener tale episode where I want to hear anything spooky, anything sinister, anything true crime based. Have you seen someone horrible on your Ring doorbell? That's one thing that pops up on my TikTok all the time. It's just horrendous things that have been caught on Ring doorbells. I've been recommended one, but I haven't been able to bring myself to get it yet because I don't want to know if someone's creepily creeping around my house in the middle of the night. So yeah, send them in. You can email me. You can message me. I've had a few come in on Instagram, so you can just send them in and I will put all the info in the show notes. I hope you're all well. I also would love to hear your book and podcast and general TV show recommendations, so they're always welcome as well. So yeah, back to the London tubes. Newbies, we go. I'm a fan of a series. So we go on the London tubes, we go through the US alphabetically. We're still recovering from California. And today we are at the Arsenal tube station in the borough of Highbury. I think it's on the Piccadilly line. It is on the Piccadilly line. I'm going to be confident about that. Is it though? God, I've only not lived in London for 6 months and already my tube station knowledge is drifting. But it's up North London, basically, and a very famous football team. If you are a North Londoner, it could be your football team. This is a bit of a patchwork episode because there are two murders that I really want to cover, and there's not a lot of information on either. And the link is they both take place in Highbury, which is the borough where Arsenal Station is, which is the tube stop we're visiting today. And I love doing mini-sodes. I try and keep mini-sodes, obviously the last mini-sode was not light-hearted. I just try and keep mini-sodes as like little snippets of interesting history stories or things like that. That's a Patreon exclusive. But I don't know, these I wanted to be in a main episode, but as you'll see, there's not a lot of info on either of them, but there are a few strange connections. So let's get into it. First, we're going back to the 1st of June 1974, when the body of 22-year-old sex worker Eileen Cotter is found face down with her buttocks exposed in front of a block of garages in Hamilton Park, Highbury. Her underwear and tights were pulled down and were just around her right ankle, so completely off her left leg, and her handbag and glasses are missing. She had been brutally beaten, and the autopsy would confirm the cause of death as manual strangulation, so with the hands. Witnesses had seen Cotter with different men around a hot dog stand nearby where she was found before she went to a house with a client She was described as a popular girl with a kind heart. Now, a murder investigation is launched, but it basically comes to nothing. Her last client that we know of from the night before, the 31st of May, came forward. He accurately described her clothing and noted that she carried spare tights and underwear with her. And then she walked back up Seven Sisters Road, where she was seen again at the hot dog stand. So it seems that she used the hot dog stand as a sort of place from which to work. So that's where she was regularly seen. Now, the place where Cotter is found is often frequented by sex workers and their clients, though residents say they didn't recognise Cotter as having been there before. Now, obviously, sex workers work at night most often, so it doesn't mean much that she wasn't recognised, but it means that she wasn't necessarily a regular there. Now, Police Officer Briggs last checked the area at 12:50 in the morning of the 1st of June and didn't find anyone there, didn't see anything suspicious. One of the residents heard a woman scream at about 2 a.m, but Cotter's body is not found and reported to the police until 2 p.m. on the 1st of June. Now, luckily, vaginal and anal swabs were taken, and though DNA testing was limited at the time, they were kept and they were stored correctly. Another problem with this case was that Detective Chief Superintendent Frank McGuinness was in charge of the case, but he was actually also working on several other murders that would turn out to be the work of a serial killer you've probably never heard of, and we will talk about him in another episode. As I'm sure you can imagine, the death of a sex worker in London in the 70s would not have been top of the police's to urgently solve list, but add on a rampaging serial killer in the same area, and it's hardly surprising that the hunt for the murderer of Eileen Cotter goes nowhere. And I couldn't find any evidence of her family being involved or, her family keeping the story going. So luckily, we can now fast forward 48 years to June 2022. Now, what is really weird is the murder of Eileen Cotter has been on my list for about 6 months. And I'm recording this in September 2022. In June 2022, DNA testing linked her murder to a 79-year-old Sydney man, John Applegren. Interestingly, he has dual UK and South African nationality, which ties us to the case we're talking about in a minute. But Applegren had submitted to DNA testing on the request of the police for something completely unrelated, and it showed up as a match for the swabs from the Eileen Cotter murder. Boom. I'm so pleased. I feel like fate made me wait and not cover this case until now, because if I'd done it earlier in the year, it would still be unsolved. So one of the reasons I wanted to do this case is that the one we're going to talk about, as I said, the one we're going to talk about next as well is also a sort of typically London case, and the internet is saturated with true crime information, but there is so little on the smaller UK crimes, and quite often I'll find myself being quite embroiled in something similar that's happened in the US, but there's so much more information. And I don't know what it was. I'm going to put a picture up of Eileen Cotter. There's something about her that's really sweet looking, and the fact that for so long the only thing you could find was the state in which her body was found in, and that she was a sex worker, and that was it. And it made me feel really sad. So I'm hoping to cover more unusual, smaller UK cases. Now, I cannot find anywhere if Applegren was found guilty of this, or I suspect he probably was, or if he had committed other crimes, or even if he spoke. There's really little to go on. I have applied to get the court document, so I can do an update if I'm ever allowed to have access to the court documents. What we do know is on the 28th of June 2022, Applegreen appeared at Old Bailey, which is our Crown Court in London, charged with the murder of Eileen Cotter. The court heard that he had a 1 in a billion DNA match to evidence found on her body. He was also charged with indecently assaulting an 18-year-old female guest at his wedding to his first wife in 1972. I mean, of all the times to bloody well sexually assault someone, your wedding? You can't even keep it in your pants in your wedding? He apparently pressed his penis into the poor woman's hand as she left the bathroom at the wedding reception. Now, that wouldn't be sexy even if it was someone you were having an adult consenting relationship with. FYI, if my husband pressed his penis into my hand, I mean, I'm not going to tell you what I'd do, but it wouldn't be comfortable for him, and I'd find it hilarious. But I'm not an 18-year-old at a wedding reception. Keep it in your pants. So yes, I'm assuming as there was a 1 in a billion DNA match that he has been locked up. I don't think he even attended court. I think he attended court via Zoom from prison. So I think perhaps it was just a courtesy to let him show up at all, and they're just locking him up. Fingers crossed. So the next case we're going to look at is more recent, and an example of why, when I tut and shake my head at America for its truly terrible gun laws, I try not to get too much on my high horse, because our knife crime over here is far from good, as I was saying at the top of the show. Looking at for murders in Arsenal, you will just find so many teen stabbings. It's upsetting. But we're going to the 3rd of October 1997, when 25-year-old Ricky Smith, an expert floor fitter and father of 2, and his girlfriend decided to stop and get a kebab on their way home from a night out, which is a fairly standard Friday night in London. As they're walking home along Hamilton Road at 11:30 p.m, the couple are approached by a man who out of nowhere stabs Ricky in the chest and runs off. The attacker fled into Highbury Park and then into Obert Park and Avenel Road, and then into Conewood Street opposite the old Arsenal football ground, where the police find a blue baseball cap, a red and white jacket with the words Chicago Bulls on the back and a bull's face on the front, and a 5-inch lock knife with a wood effect handle with a yellow $9.95 price sticker on it. They also found 2 carrier bags, a green one from Phoenix, Brent Cross, and a white one from Wilkie's. Now, I've read an interview with Richard's parents. They get to the scene, they get to the scene. The paramedics are working on Ricky, and his mother gets to hold his hand on the way to the hospital in the ambulance, but he dies on arrival at the Whittington Hospital. Police believe this to be an isolated, unprovoked attack. There's no evidence really, except for what is found at the scene: the cap, the jacket, the bags, and the knife. But it doesn't really deliver much. A label inside the jacket was marked starter, and the next day it was reported that a man came asking about the bags that had been found at the scene, but was told by a resident that the police had taken them in, and he said, he'll contact the police then, but of course he never did. Again, there are no leads, there's no links to go on, so it's a dead end. But in 2011, police retested the items found at the crime scene, and they get a DNA match. The attack on Ricky Smith was not, as they first believed, an isolated incident, but was in fact linked to another stabbing that had happened on the same night 2 hours earlier in Harlesden, northwest London. At around 9:15 that evening, so we're back on the 3rd of October 1997, 21-year-old Juan Marais, who had just moved to London from South Africa, see the link, was walking to a friend's house for a barbecue with a carrier bag full of cans of beer. As he walked along College Road, a man walked up behind him and asked for the time. As Murray looked down at his watch, he felt as though he'd been punched, but he looked down and saw blood soaking through his shirt. The attacker had pulled out a knife and stabbed him in the chest and abdomen. The man then picked up the bag, the victim's bag, and walked away towards Kensal Rise Station. We don't know if this is then one of the plastic bags found at the next crime scene. That's impossible to find out. Well, I found it impossible to find out. So Murray manages to make it to a nearby off-licence where the lady there calls the ambulance and tries to stop the bleeding with her hands. Murray remembers she kept talking to him throughout and keeping him calm, even though he was finding it hard to breathe. Luckily, he survived the attack, and he was horrified in 2011 to hear that his attacker then went on to kill Ricky just hours later. It must give you real survivor's guilt. It must be really shocking, because obviously it's been a long time since that happened, and then to find out that that person went on to kill someone hours later, it must be awful. So we know that Murray was asked the time before his attack, but nothing was said to Smith or his girlfriend before he was stabbed, and nothing was taken. This guy literally just walked up and boom, that was it. In September 2012, Ricky Smith's murder was featured on BBC's Crime Watch, and the police said they were still wanting to speak to the man that had come to look for the bags the day after the attack. No shit, Sherlock. But obviously no one came forward. I do think that someone's got to know something, because that jacket, I'm not sure how popular those types of jackets were in the 90s. My friends didn't have one, but obviously the Chicago Bulls are from Chicago, not the UK, so that makes it more niche. But then I don't know if that was like a fashion thing and they just made loads of them and sold them in the UK, and therefore it was like everyone having, I don't know, kickers, or do you know what I mean? It wasn't, I don't know if it was a fashion trend at the time. So that's it. Ricky Smith's daughter and son, his daughter was 10 and his son was 14 months old when he died, have had to grow up without their father. In his son's case, he never knew his father. And Ricky Smith's parents are still on the hunt for answers. They haven't given up. They are constantly asking the police to keep the search open. There's so little to go on though, and I guess it shows that retesting and keeping an eye on the case, if they hadn't bothered retesting it, they wouldn't have linked it to the Juan Murray attack. So hopefully the police will see that it's worth to keep going, but there's a lot of crime in London, so it's very difficult. Survivor Juan Murray said, "I had another chance at life, but he didn't get the same chance. I'm hoping that by speaking out we can finally achieve some closure for Ricky's family." And that is the murder of Eileen Cotter and the unsolved murder of Ricky Smith. My sources for this were unsolvedmurders.co.uk, murdermap.co.uk, mylondon.com. There's loads of stuff in like the Daily Mail, but it's all about the arrest of Eileen Cotter's murderer in June. And yeah, as I say, anything about Eileen Cotter before that is just, sex worker found dead. In terms of Ricky Smith, again, it's all about, we found this link, but then that doesn't go anywhere. And I know that someone will know who committed these crimes. I hope that you are all well and enjoying the autumnal feel that is definitely swirling around. I have a jumper on today. I'm thinking about getting my nice cozy winter socks out. I'd love to hear from you, so do send an email to themondaynightrevue@gmail.com. You can find us on social media, where we are at The Monday Night Review on Instagram, Facebook and TikTok. And you can come and join the Patreon, where for £1 a month you can listen to every episode ad-free. For a bit more on the middle tier, you get extra content and some mini-sodes, and for the top tier you get everything. You get ad-free, all the mini-sodes, all the extra stories on there, and all patrons will get early ordering and 10% off merch when I finally pull my finger out. I've got the t-shirts designed, I just need to get them ordered. And until next time, be kind, stay safe, and always check the back seat before you drive.